Steve. How are you? Good, good. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Hey, Steve.
It's been a while.
We're going live real quick so I can double check it. Just heads up, the microphones are live. I want to make sure we're working, and then I can.
People would for the
Don't say anything out of it.
Democratic preliminary, for the voting February 14th. You know any of these people that are running? I mean, I know Bridget Shea, but I don't think she's.
Season through. Did you get a new truck?
Good
I
morning.
did.
Yeah, she did have someone
The
opposing
old
her.
expedition gave out.
And they
Oh, no.
That's
too.
hard.
That is so hard.
Do you want to talk
So
to
it was
Bridget
either
or?
going to be a major engine overhaul or go get something new.
Well,
Well, good you could find a truck.
yeah.
I
That's what
looked
you
into
should
one.
be happy about.
Somebody custom ordered it 3
You don't want
months
the vote to
ago.
be 50-50.
And I
As
put
much
bids
as
on it,
George,
and
as
they
much,
said,
why don't you
"Give them
shoot me
till
an email?
Tuesday," and they didn't.
Shoot me an email and that way I'll see it and I can do something with it.
Well, Jason traded his 4-year-old truck in for a brand new truck for the same price.
I'm Mary Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I'm Jennifer.
I mean, it's like $4,000 difference.
Jennifer.
I know.
Jennifer
It's
Meyer.
insane.
It's crazy. Crazy what used cars are.
So my
going.
2007 Navigator might have some
Yes.
miles left in it.
Ashley?
We are live. Everyone, I just want to let you know. I'm going to make sure the audio is. I can turn it off if we're not ready to go. But.
I just wanted to tell you the college my
July of last year. Okay.
Hey, Mary Elizabeth,
I need to double
Yes.
check on it.
I took my, little
That's
root
an iron,
core
right?
and I went
No,
to the
because we
budget
didn't
store. I
have it
couldn't find
yet,
any
but
to
that's what I was wondering, like, do we
It
have to
was,
bring it back to council?
over
Or, you know, there's a $500
towards
price
where,
difference now because prices are
It's over to that same corner towards where those other ones were. Yeah, so when the Stacy's on the right side, right in that corner, and,
Is it little?
I can pull it up if you want.
Okay.
It's gotta be your friends.
From July.
So it would have been,
Okay.
I received his
Yeah.
first bid July
Probably,
15th.
it's probably like that big around, huh? I mean, these are not
yeah, it's helpful.
August.
fun size.
But I haven't
That's what
even
I'm
looked
looking
at
at now.
it in months,
I'll
obviously.
give it another look.
Let me see.
I took a
Park
picture of it,
Commission.
that was a month ago, so it'll probably be larger now. You know, there's just major, to the right of it, there's just trees of it.
It was not on
God.
8 August.
And there's more that Vicky and those guys have been mowing down.
me see
You
if
just
it's
can't
in-
see it.
Yeah.
September.
Stuff with the thorns.
No, it's, well, yeah, but this stuff's thick, and it's got deep roots.
Well, I was curious what the process was
I
going to
am
be.
like,
Yeah.
They're not tap water?
I took your place. She took my place, sorry. So wait, where do you sit then?
I sat over there last time.
I guess.
Or there's a seat.
You can sit here.
Oh,
It doesn't
wait,
bother
oh,
me.
wait, Melissa, here you go.
Sit in the middle, Melissa.
Oh,
That
there
sounds
you go.
good.
I forget there's 3 here.
Right, with the teacher can keep an eye on you.
That's right.
I think we should all pick different chairs every time.
Keep everybody on their toes.
That's right.
Okay.
All right.
And we're live and ready to go.
Is that Lori over there?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it off of
I'm on the names.
All right, are we ready to call to order? Park Commission meeting as of Monday, February 7th, 2022. Now called to order. Let's take roll. Everybody say their names.
Nicole Marisi.
Laurie Mills.
Chad Smith.
Melissa Morrow.
Don Hudson.
Jennifer Meyer.
Mary Elizabeth Kofer.
We got everybody here. All right. First up looks like public comments. Citizens wishing to address the Park Commission for items not on the agenda will be received at this time. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, our commission is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Citizens who wish to address the Park Commission will be received at the time the item is considered for matters on the agenda. One?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding.
Okay.
Gavin Massagill, Mayor. I thought the this would be a great time since nothing that I talk about can be addressed in your meeting. I just wanted to say hello, and had not had an opportunity to speak to Parks Commission since I had the opportunity, or we'll just consider it an opportunity by my colleagues on council to be appointed to fill Mayor Dyson's unexpired term. So I'm happy to be in the new role and look forward to working with each of you and council as we move forward. And just wanted, I know or have visited with most of you, but if I haven't had a chance to visit with you, feel free to call on me anytime. Ashley has my cell phone. I think we put my cell phone on my business card or the city card. So feel free to grab those and call on me anytime. I'll start off with just a quick anecdote. So I as you may know, I was served on city council for 4 years and was in the budget liaison. Oh, well, I served on council for more than that, but I was the budget liaison for 4 years, and put a lot of work into some of those budget meetings. And I remember one specifically several years ago where I came in, we'd worked really hard on the budget, and the place was packed, and we were going to do some actually adoption of a tax rate that evening. And I thought, when I pulled up, well, this is great. Everyone's here for the budget, and they're really taking an active role in all the hard work that we've done on this new tax rate that we're going to adopt here tonight. I walked in, I had all my stuff, and we did the little work group. We got ready to adopt the tax rate was a little bit further down in the agenda, and then had a few items before the tax rate came up, one of which was a park item that I hadn't spent a lot of time on looking at because I've been spending all my time on the tax rate in the budget workshop. So that item came up. It was contentious, unbeknownst to me at the time. We finished it, and the entire room cleared out before we got to raising everyone's taxes on the next agenda item. So it was an important lesson for me early on in my career on council that sometimes the park issues that you deal with are far more interesting and contentious and will turn out a crowd more so than the tax issues that I had spent so much time on. So thank you for all that you do. I want you to understand how I view my role now, not as a policymaker, which when I was on council, I was a policymaker. I'm a lobbyist by profession and spend a lot of time at the Capitol, and my stock and trade is in that legislative process. And so council is a legislative body. The governor is the executive, and certainly don't compare myself to that type of position, but the fact of the matter is the mayor's position is an executive position. And so my job is not to impose my will on you or the council or anyone else, but it's to work with you, work with council to come up with fair policies that are executable so that I can work with our staff to make sure that those issues and policies are executed. That's the way I view it. That's the way I will approach it. And so I just want you to understand kind of where I'm coming from in terms of a governance perspective. And that does bring me to one thing that I think you will get to later on, and I just want to bring it up now. It's not necessarily a part of an agenda item because I think that it's a little broader in reach going forward. But I'm somewhat here today too on behalf of my staff, who is also your staff, and I want to make sure that you know that we are very fortunate to have people pleasers and really hardworking staff. And I know that we have a lot of passion on the Parks Commission when it comes to the use of our park, our wonderful park that we all agree is a gem for our community. But we do need to remember that when we pass policies and have policies to be executed by our staff, their first goal is to do what you all want. And that sometimes gets difficult if there's not a clear consensus on what you want. And so when it's left to them to arbitrate, it doesn't always lead to a good position for them to be in. And so I'm here advocating on behalf of them that let's do our work together to make sure that we have clear and executable goals in terms of policies, so that they're not put in an awkward position of upsetting one side or the other. And I think that we can all do that and work together. We're all grown-ups. And I think we owe it to our very quality staff to give them that clear and concise guidance. And I think we can do it. And I'm here to help help guide us to that. We currently have over 10 pending reservation requests for use of the park. And I got the call just last week from Ashley to say, how do we, it really falls to us to approve these. And I'm going to stay for the discussion today because I think that you have an agenda item that will discuss some of the type of guidance that I'm talking about. Because I'll tell you, the position that we're in today, and staff is in today, is that we're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so I want to listen to the discussion and use that dialogue that you are going to have to help me give staff guidance on how to move forward with some of these issues that are on their desk. So with that, I will leave it to you. Again, I'm excited. Oh, one other thing. And it's not quite right to come talk to you about yet, but I'm excited. I got a call from a gentleman who grew up in Rollingwood. He has, unfortunately, his mother passed away. He's interested in maybe doing something in terms of a donation to the park. I told him pause. I want to do a lot of due diligence on that issue before we just roll it out, because we've seen those things go awry in the past. So I'm just putting it on your radar to let you know that something's out there. I'm going to do some due diligence with this gentleman who doesn't live here in Austin or Rollingwood anymore, but see kind of what he has in mind, and then we'll circle back and kind of let you know that there may be some sort of opportunity for some improvements with some naming rights that come to it for his mom. So anyway, exciting stuff. I look forward to coming back to you with that. And with that, thank you for your work, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great that you can't talk back. I will always address you just in this.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm in favor of anybody who wants to give money to the park. So it's got my vote.
I feel used. I like your style.
I have a question. If I were to want to make a public comment, but not from Park Commission, can I do that? Do I have to stand up and do it there, or? Okay. And maybe it's a little bit of overlap. Nicole Marisi, 4906 Timberline. We, in years past, have tried to do, and it's my park day, and it has pretty much fallen through the wheel or through the cracks for the last couple of years. One, COVID. Two, we didn't have anyone in Park Commission that wanted to lead it and charge it. And so there is this local fundraiser that's going to be happening for Need Mulch. And it might be something of interest that if we can't do It's My Park Day down the road, I know that's a free donation from Austin Park Foundation, but we may want to consider putting this on our agenda for the next month and discuss it if it's something that we would want to participate in and support the Westlake High School Band with a local fundraiser. So that was the first thing. And then so that's that. And then I guess this is more from the Park Commission side of things, that Vicki Ballard is now going to be helping oversee the reservation process for commercial, non-commercial, as well as pavilion rentals. And so we're hopeful that, as we make this transition from kind of our antiquated system into a little bit more of a streamlined position, that we just give her the support that she needs, and we be patient in that process as we're developing it. So those are the only two public comments that I was going to share today. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nicole.
I have one thing. I don't know if this is the time.
I was just kind of kidding, but you can talk wherever.
Is there any chance that I know I cannot be here for the March meeting? Is there any at 11:30? Is there any chance it could be done earlier, later, the day before, the day after? Anything?
What date is it?
It's I think it's March 7th. Something. I have a friend that's on hospice, and there's an issue that day.
I'm wide open.
I'm wide open also.
So am I.
Yeah, I can do that.
I could. We were having our our meetings at 9:30 in the morning. Could we fall back to 9:30 on that, just for that day?
Any objections, Lori?
Works for me.
Are we the first Tuesday or the second Tuesday?
First Monday.
First Monday, okay. I don't know why I'm thinking
Oh, the
Tuesday.
first.
March 7th?
March 7th, sorry.
That works for me.
Yay, thank you so much.
So the
All right,
March 7th at 9:30? Is
Yes.
that what you're thinking?
March 7th, 9:30.
Confirmation and a calendar update, this afternoon, so we can make sure everybody has that on their calendar. Also, as far as public comments go, I didn't get an item on the agenda for, Little League or girls softball, if y'all wanted to do that under, public comments.
Steve, you want to chat now so you can take off?
Steve Frank, Western Hills, girls softball. I guess a couple things. Fencing finished last week. Sorry it took so long, but we had a couple issues with the work crew all catching COVID. And then they were shorted materials. So because those were special order, they had to order more and stuff. So, but they did finish everything last week, and I'm doing final walkthrough with them later this week. So we should be good there. The season is starting. I think we had our first team practice last night from the softball side. So you'll start to see more teams up there. I'm still trying to figure out the exact practice schedules and all that. But we'll start to see them there pretty much most every night. So I will possibly need some help just notifying community. I know sometimes we get the police department involved like the first week or two just to drive by and check that there's no altercations or anything. The team that practiced last night was supposed to practice on the smaller field, but because there were so many people out there with dogs, they practiced on the larger field, which is not their field. So going forward, I'd rather them practice on their size field and stuff, but they just didn't want to, cause a commotion last night. But that's just something we always work with kind of the first week of practices. First week of games will be February 27th, Saturday, and then, or 26th, 26th. And then we'll have games pretty much every Saturday after that, except for the 2 spring break weekends, and then we take off Easter weekend also. And then it'll go through May 14th or so. And that's pretty much it. I'm not sure Little League, Chad, I don't quite know what their schedule, theirs a little different than ours.
Yeah, I got a notice that they were having tryouts February 12th and the 13th. They're going to use Hatley 1 for those. And then they'll come up with schedules and everything like that after that, once
So-
teams are formed,
Yeah, so they're a little bit behind on getting practices started and such.
as always.
Yeah. And games, and they do more games on weeknights than we do. But any questions, comments, anything?
I have one comment.
Yes.
Actually, it's a question. It's actually more for Ashley. Is this appropriate for us to use that signage, that board there at the park at the entrance over by the upper playground, to put a notice there that games have begun?
Sure, I think we could post a schedule there. Obviously, as it's updated, it may not always be 100% accurate, so as long as we have an updated schedule.
I mean, even if we don't make it an exact schedule, just to give people a notice that this is beginning, and I know everyone won't see it, but if we get to some people, we need to use that space anyway.
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah, and I've got it almost done. I've got maybe one team that I'm still kind of waiting to hear from, so I can get that to Ashley to post up there.
How many teams did y'all get this year?
So we got 1 at 6U, 3 at 8U, 3 at 10U, 1 at 12U, and 2 at 14U. So it was pretty good numbers for us, about the exact same as last year, which was an increase from the year before. So we're happy with it. Not as, I guess, a little disappointed we didn't get as many 6U players because we've been getting that before, but we'll see.
Would it make sense or help anything if we put maybe a laminated one piece of paper kind of on the fence going into fields 3, 4, and 5 saying, hey, softball and baseball practices are starting beginning in the evenings?
That's up to,
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit
Right.
month. I am concerned that after all this time and everybody having full purview of the lease, that we are still having issues with residents and users with dogs not giving them the land. That's a problem. I mean, I think everybody knows that we have leased the park. I do think we should revisit what we talked about last week, which was putting signs up saying you can expect Little League and softball to use these fields during these times, and give something with a little bit of buffer so there's no, so that everybody has their time there and knows when they can go and knows when it'll be used and everybody can use the park.
Well, and this is one way of addressing that with what he's saying. So I think, you know, we need to all be flexible.
Like, I think people just don't know when we're gonna start, and so.
Right, I
First week, it's
just
kinda
maybe a one pager that says, hey, baseball and softball is getting ready to start,
But
you know,
I think
starting
I
at
think in the
5
fall,
p.m.
Like, I think it just, once the people see the team show up, they've been pretty good about leaving the fields.
Good.
Better than in the past, I would say.
Well, good. So we're making progress there. I think just putting out the sign at the beginning of the season is a great idea.
Is there typically somebody who gets there ahead of the teams? 'Cause it might be, that could be, if it's just up there all the time, these things kind of get part of the landscape and not noticed as much. But if somebody came up and just put a sign on each one of the gates going into the fields 3, 4, and 5, softball practice today, 7 to 9 or whatever.
I wasn't talking about like a temporary sign each time we do a practice. I just meant a laminated piece of paper right on the gate that says, hey, attention, baseball and softball is getting ready to start up in the next couple of weeks. They'll start using the field starting at 5 p.m. just so that people who are walking their dogs and have been in the habit of doing it that way for the last couple of months will have a heads up that, hey, we're going to start having baseball and softball just to minimize the altercations. Because everybody, we can't get somebody out there 30 minutes ahead of time every time.
That just doesn't happen. There's
No,
not
just
someone who.
because it's all volunteers. It's all dads and
And I
moms.
think-
that
I
are
think
And
coaching.
that
people-
should be on our city to do that.
Well,
In my opinion.
I think the city staff is kind of overstretched. I think if we put up a sign, I think Chad's idea is great. Put up this sign, people will get used to them being there like they have in the past. And I think, let's see how that works.
And like I said, at least for the first week, lots of times I just notify the police department and they'll make a friendly drive-by at the beginning of practices just to make sure people are clearing.
God bless you.
Thank you.
But then after that, I think people get used to when the times are that they
Yeah.
need to leave by.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks,
Anything
Steve.
else?
Thanks, Steve.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing, maybe before you leave. Are you planning to stay or are you planning to leave?
Was planning to stay.
Okay, good. Because you'll be.
There's some good stuff on there.
Perfect.
All right, discussion and possible action on the minutes from the January 3rd, 2022 Park Commission meeting. I know the minutes just got added over the weekend, but did anybody have any questions about them or any comments before we make a motion?
No.
All right, I make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 3rd meeting.
I second it.
Anybody opposed? All right, motion passes.
Normally you say all in favor.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Whatever you want me to say. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion approved. All right, number 4, discussion and possible action to elect a chair of the Park Commission.
I have a motion. I'd like to move that Chad Smith become the chair permanently.
I'll
Second that.
All in favor?
Well,
Say aye.
are you willing to take?
Yeah, I'll
it?
do it.
Okay,
I'll do it.
thank you.
It's fine. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
No, you got
All
this
right.
down now.
Thank you,
Motion
Chad.
passes.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
You bet.
Said permanently too,
Hold on. I'd like to make an amendment, coterminous with
Good job,
my
Melissa.
term of service. Yeah, sorry. That was a veteran from the cheap seats throwing in a Hail Mary, thank you. Discussion concerning the park deed regarding youth sports. I don't know who put this one on here, so.
That was me, and
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify from the last meeting we had talked about, or it was said that, possibly the deed wasn't enforceable, and that the city attorney had said that, so I just asked Ashley to look into that, see what the context was, and Ashley, do you wanna talk about what you found?
Sure, I'll, just wanted to let y'all know, I went back and watched the video, and it was a little confusing because it was over Zoom. That was not our city attorney that made that statement. I think it was another elected official who was there on Zoom, potentially saying that, you know, you could argue that it wasn't enforceable because it hadn't been before. Have not been able to, you know, get further counsel from the city attorney on that. Generally, those kind of requests come through an elected official or city council to request them to look into those type of requests and, you know, spend city funds.
So all I did, wanting to put that on there, I just wanted to make sure we were all operating from the same truth, and not that we had said something and we didn't really know, and then it becomes fact. So that's where I was going with that, so I just wanted to set the record straight that it was not our city attorney that said that, so.
Who was it on the, because the person did say their name, and they did identify themselves as the city attorney.
I believe it was a past council member. I believe it was Buck Shapiro. When I listened to the meeting,
No, it wasn't Buck.
It wasn't Buck.
I must have listened to the wrong part of the meeting then. I heard that exact statement. I heard him say, ask it to the city attorney, and then Charlie started to answer, and then Buck said that. So they did ask the city attorney, and he did not ever answer from what I heard. So.
And just to be clear, what it was that in the meeting, someone mentioned whether the kids had to be from the West Bank area or not. And the person who claimed they were the attorney for the city said that that was not enforceable, whether you had to require it be West Bank kids or not.
Oh, okay, that's different than what I heard.
Yeah,
That's different than what I heard too.
Okay, so that portion of the deed may be unenforceable, that it restricts to kids from the West Bank area? Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't clear from.
But
our
not
last-
But
the
that
part.
was, again, not said by the city attorney, so
Right.
I just wanna make sure that what we're saying here doesn't suddenly become fact if we don't know it to be. So that was,
No, I'm glad you
it sounds like
clarified.
there's two things here that we were all hearing differently,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and neither one of them have been verified by the attorney.
And so
And whether or not council wants to do that or not, I just wanted to set the record straight that that hadn't been said.
So do we want to read the portion of the deed that was interpreted incorrectly? Because I interpreted last meeting that the warranty deed, which prioritized youth organized sports, is not enforceable according to our city attorney. That's what I remember from my brain. That's not necessarily
That's what I heard
Right.
too.
That's
fact.
what I heard too.
So what I said was that at a previous council meeting, that the city attorney had questioned whether whether a part of that agreement was enforceable, and the attorney said it wasn't. And so what I was asking at the last meeting is, why would there be one part of the deed that's
Right.
unenforceable? And then does that discount what else is in the deed that's not enforceable?
Sure.
And so the question that I have back to the city attorneys really is, what are we restricted to by that deed? Like, what is, if in fact, again, if you're saying now that it was Buck who's an attorney and not the attorney who said that, which I can understand, we were all on Zoom, so it might be hard to understand who said it, although the person said their name. So they said, Charlie, what do you think about this? And he said, well, that part of it is unenforceable because, but he didn't give reasoning behind that, why it was unenforceable.
I remember, and obviously our memories can be, and I haven't rewatched it, but I remember it seemed to be that he was saying it was unenforceable because it had not been challenged in so long. Like, you know, in layman's terms, I'm not an attorney, there's a shelf life. If you don't challenge it, then you can bring a challenge
but the court's gonna say, well, that's been going on for 10 years and nobody's had a problem with it, and move on. And that was my understanding of that discussion.
Well, I think in the interest of today and what this is, I think we just have to go to the council and say, is this something you want us to look into or not, whether or not you want to spend money with the attorney. I don't know that we need to take it any further today. I just wanted to go back to what was said last week and verify it, and then if city wants to go back to the attorney, they can.
One more thing, the reason why I do think it's important to get clarification on that is I can see a scenario where there's a Round Rock lacrosse group who wants to rent a field, and they come down and they say, hey, we want to rent your field. It's a public field. How come we can't come rent it? And so we just want to I want to know, like, what are the limitations on who we can rent it out to, and if, because the other thing that's in the deed, which I was surprised rereading it recently, I asked Ashley to put it in there, was that it only had to be a majority of youth. So actually, those fields actually can be rented out to adults as well. And again, not that I'm suggesting we change anything, it's just that I do think it'd be good for us to have, again, kind of like the staff, having really good clarity about what are the parameters of who we're allowed to rent it out to. And if the intention, which, you know, it came from the Optimus Club, was to mostly rent it out to youth, and I think that's what we've been doing, you know, just to continue in that manner. And, you know, does it, you know, but I have, you know, for the future, I have no idea who else is going to come and ask us to come and rent the fields. So, yeah, if we could just get a little bit clarification on what is this really restricted to, and at some point, if we wanted to do something different, because it does say you can reconfigure the fields also. You can do them in a completely different way. You can have, you can make them, instead of being baseball fields, into soccer and football fields, that kind of stuff. I think it, you know, even if it was just an hour of the attorney's time to say, hey, this is all the things that you can do with it.
Well, was that not explored when they did the master park plan?
Not to my knowledge.
I didn't find anything in that about deed restrictions, and all that are in the back of that big thick document, but I don't think it talks in detail about them.
Well, it says the foregoing restrictions shall not be deemed or construed to limit the park and recreational purposes to which the balance of the property which is not being utilized for athletic fields may be used. So the remainder of the property may be used for other park and recreational purposes which are determined by grantee in its sole discretion.
That's the remainder of the park, not the fields. But when it talks about the fields, it says that use a portion of the property for 4 baseball/softball fields, which may be converted to a football or soccer field,
There you go.
which athletic fields may be combination or multi-use fields, and which may be improved, reconstructed, relocated, or reconfigured as determined by the grantee in its sole discretion. That means those fields up top, we could do whatever you want, so long as they remain athletic fields in some form. I mean, a football field is very different from a softball field,
Sure.
but that's allowed. So,
Anything else on this subject?
So to restate
Any-
clearly that
Yeah.
the question is not the usage of the fields according to the warranty deed. They are still they are prioritized for youth organized sports, and that we as the whole, as the park commission, understand and support that. If city decides to go and research legally if the West Bank is enforceable or not, that's on city council side to determine whether or not we need that clarification. Is that what I understand our discussion kind of summarized as?
Well, I would expand it to be it's like, what are the limitations on that warranty? Like, if for some reason all children start doing video games and we don't have anyone wanting to rent the fields for sports, is there a limit on that? Like, can we change it? If we decide to make one field into 4 and we turn the rest of the park into something else, are we allowed to do that? I mean, I'm just throwing out there, like, what, what truly, those deed restrictions, I have no idea how enforceable they are and what they really mean. Like, again, I can imagine in 100 years, who knows what our whole city is gonna look like? What are we really restricted to? Is it true that, I don't know, again, I don't know if pollution is so bad children don't play outdoors, that can we still not make that into something else? That's what
Well,
I would wanna know.
I don't feel the need to know that for the short term, for our purposes. I know that there's a deed restricting it to youth sports, and that we have a lease with baseball and softball for the foreseeable future, notwithstanding any, video games or pollution taking effect. But for anything we've got to do in the short term, I'm pretty comfortable with where we stand. All right. Next item up is number 6, discussion and possible action concerning the development of guidelines for staff on the ideal number of days and hours of scheduled activities in the park.
That was my agenda item. That was sort of, once we developed the way that someone could come in and rent the fields, we wanted to give the staff some guidelines about how much we want the park to be available for kids to just jump on the fields, and how much for actually scheduled activities, et cetera. And so that's why we have that on there. That was sort of our next steps when Nicole and I were talking about, and Don, about what sort of the next piece of direction is for the staff. So I do think there's probably, at least from a maintenance and sort of a field standpoint, there is a maximum amount you would want to have people on fields in general, because you need to have rest. You need to have times where you're reseeding, aerating, adding weed killer and pest kinds of things on there. I know we generally at WEA, we try to aerate the fields at least twice a year. The best time, at least our experience has been with having youth sports on there. You would normally aerate and reseed sometime in the spring, but that's usually when we have a lot of baseball and other sports going on. And so for us, we've always kind of, as soon as we have our last games, end of May, then we'll, with the exception of like All-Stars for baseball, we'll go ahead and shut down those fields, we'll aerate them, and then we'll go ahead and reseed them in June and keep them closed. You want to keep them closed till you have 3 mowings. So basically, it ends up being about 6 weeks, depending on the rain and the sun and everything like that. So I know 3, 4, and 5 I for sure think that they should be closed for at least 6 to 8 weeks, probably in, as soon as the last T-ball games happen down there and softball games, and then try and get those up and going, because once mid-July comes and the temperature is over 100, grass stops growing again, just like it does in the wintertime. So,
But not weeds.
but
So
not,
wait.
Yeah.
not weeds.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You want to close fields 3, 4, and 5 for 6 to 8 weeks in June after the T-ball?
Yeah. Well, really, as soon as the last T-ball game happens,
Okay.
I would recommend that we close those for 6 to 8 weeks to reseed them, get the grass growing again. That's the best time of year to do it. You can do it again in the fall when it starts cooling off again, but you won't see the kind of growth that you see in the springtime with rain and everything else.
I could see a lot of people being upset that the fields were completely shut off for half of the summer. Just to kids wanting to play out there and people wanting to run dogs out there and stuff like that.
Do you want to play on mud or on grass?
No, I want to play on grass.
Well,
Is
surely
I want
people
them to be
understand.
turf.
Is there irrigation to fields 3, 4, and 5?
There is.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
If there's, I think, an education about why we're doing it, I would hope people could understand. And we still have all of this down here, and we still have other areas for them to go. But I know what you're saying. Everybody gets upset when something's
Yeah,
not available when they
anytime you
want it.
Close it off.
But,
We would just have to work
don't
around
think we
also the
have-
I-9 lease. I believe that they have 3 one-week camps. And so we would just have to do a workaround with them and see if they'd be amiable to relocate to fields 1 and 2 during those camps with that closure. So I think it's
Well,
definitely
but
doable.
I do think we have to take care of our
Yes.
Yes.
parks.
And
there
our
is-
citizens and their dogs.
Right, but there
They're
won't be a
important.
park if we don't take care of it.
Are we saying close it off to every single thing?
Yeah.
No
Yes.
people playing? Okay, I just wanted
Yes.
to, I wanted to know.
It's not that we're trying to help kids or dogs or we want it's for all users. So generally speaking, and again, Vicky can probably speak to this, is those fields unfortunately have not really been taken care of very well for the last 15 years.
And
probably.
it shows.
That's all I can really, that I've been looking at them and paying attention to it. And the only thing, and here's, you know, we have the same thing. Our baseball fields tend to stay better because you have an infield where a lot of the action happens, and so the grass out in the outfield stays pretty good. One solution to that, and again, this is going to be painful for some, is that we really do focus on a different field each year. I'm hoping, I honestly think to get 3, 4, and 5 looking in a way that looks more like Zilker, the big lawn, is either going to be changing what kind of grass that's in there, or doing this probably for at least 2 or 3 years. And then the other piece of this is that usually we close either in December or January for a full month, because it's during a time where there's a lot of rain, cold, the grass isn't growing, and so it just gets destroyed. And if you get it destroyed all the way to its roots, well, it's not going to come back. You really do have to like start all over. So I do think this is one of those things where we're going to have to get used to closing certain fields down for certain amounts of time to really get them looking good. Now, right now, 1 and 2 look great. So my suggestion would be is that we do allow 1 and 2 to be used for everybody. That includes some of the dogs also, when we close down 3, 4, and 5. If we really do want to serve all of our citizens and have something where it's kind of moving around, I mean, I'm looking at 3, 4, and 5, and I don't doubt that it will come back as soon as it starts raining, it gets warm, but it's mostly weeds in there anyway. And so we're gonna have a significant, you know, it's time. And I think everybody who uses that field knows it's time we put some love and care into it, and that takes time.
I agree with what you're saying, all of it, including the sharing of fields 1 and 2, when 3, 4, and 5 are down. My question is, you suggested doing this twice a year. So if we did it in June, and then are you suggesting we would do it again then maybe in January?
I'm just saying we would and then this is what I would suggest. Just close one field down, and leave the other 2 open.
Right.
In January, so that, and I would just close down whatever is the worst looking field, the one that has the least amount of grass on it. And then, and again, if we get to a point, like we do have, if you want to go look at them, over on Cesar Chavez, McEacher Field and Bechtel Harper, I cannot explain it. Those 2 fields look beautiful all the time. We can't kill the grass on it. I don't know what it is about them, whether they just got set up better than every other one. But those I would probably not have to close down. But I'd want the opportunity that if we need to close a field down for a month, to let it rest and get aerated. Again, you're not going to seed it because nothing will grow until the temperature is warmer. But you could just aerate it during that time and just say nobody's getting on it. And then when you reopen it, it won't have lost all of the grass. So when it does start coming back in March, April, it will look better than if we just let it get destroyed all winter. Anyway, I've been really looking at those fields for at least since I started managing the other fields in a more thoughtful way about what we ought to be doing to protect and make them look better. I mean, I can remember, again, being on city council, and it would drive Hollis Jeffries, who was the liaison with Western Hills Little League, crazy, because he was like, why do the Weah fields look so good and the Hatley fields look terrible? And I said, well, because we have ABC doing it, and we rest them for 4 weeks in January, and we do this reseeding and stuff, and that's just not happening. And so my hope really with the city taking this back over is that we just say, hey, I know it's no fun, but Western Hills Little League doesn't have to take the blame for it. It's really the city is saying, for everybody's benefit, this is the way we maintain it, make it look better.
What kind of grass is on there right now?
Well, on 3, 4, and 5, it's mostly weeds.
I know that.
I mean, it should be Bermuda,
Yeah,
but it's
and
mostly
you said there's
weeds.
another kind that's,
Well,
you know,
I'm not
better.
familiar with what they put on, I don't know what kind I know it's some special thing that they have on Zilker, that they basically took all of that grass out and they put a different, so that as y'all see, when ACL happens and it gets completely trampled and it looks terrible, it actually comes back in like 6 weeks. It's amazing.
They have to resod a lot of it.
They do, well, where the stages
They
are,
do.
where the stages are, they have to resod because of the tractors and stuff like that. But a lot of it shockingly stays pretty good. So we can find out what kind of grass that
probably
is.
is.
Zoysia is what they recommended for us for high trafficked areas with our children,
Mhm.
and so it's much more expensive,
Yeah.
but
is
it
great.
does have a longer shelf life, and it tolerates the heat with no shade. Bermuda, it seems to tolerate, from my experience, personal landscaping with our people, that Bermuda will tolerate the shade as well as sun, but then the zoysia would take the high traffic areas as well as the heat, and it stands up, is more drought resistant.
So Melissa, as part
That
of
makes
your
sense.
discussion, putting new grass out there, like new seed or new sod,
We
and
can,
then letting it rest?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
On 3, 4, and 5 initially,
Yes.
because they need the most help,
Yeah.
and then maybe move into 1 and 2?
If they need it, for
If
sure.
they need it, okay.
I mean, I'm really hoping this year we're really gonna start aerating them twice a year, and you can still reseed those other ones. It's just that you don't have the bare dirt that you do that needs that
that.
protection.
Vicki,
So-
do you have any thoughts as to what you've observed since you've been working with the fields?
We have aerated, all of the fields multiple times since I've been here. We did try a reseeding, on baseball and softball, a Bermuda fescue mix. Didn't catch that great. As far as I'm aware, nothing has been properly fertilized since I started. We have thrown fertilizer down, but it has to sit and continuously be done for it to really do anything. So these definitely are all things that I would like to have a more routine on, and something that Public Works can do, and something I have done in previous jobs. So we do have that option. We've tried with the resources that we have, and would be interested in working with you guys on continuing that.
And adding in that rest is important, and
Yes.
giving that time
Mhm.
to
Yes.
soak in and really,
Yes.
And you have to have almost a wall of signs that say this is closed for maintenance, because people, as soon as it starts looking good, they'll want to get on it. So we'll have to do that. What do you think about doing sod? I mean, sod's a lot more expensive, but do you feel like there's just no way we're going to get there without sod?
I've actually thought a lot about this and done as much research as I can on Texas, these invasive weeds that we have up there, and it really isn't a bad option just to start fresh and resod, because I go out there and I throw down every weed killer that I have, it is going to destroy those fields. It will look terrible, and bringing it back is going to take a lot of time. Sod, if you prep the area well enough with plenty of sand, topsoil, you can pre-fertilize and let that sit for a few weeks so it doesn't burn the actual sod from the root. It takes off pretty nicely, and you know, you guys have probably resodded yards before in your own houses.
Yep.
It's expensive, but a fresh start kind of might be where you see the most result.
I don't remember ever seeing these fields resodded.
I haven't either.
And I've lived in this neighborhood since 90.
Just think of the opportunity.
I know.
Hey,
We could do it.
Hey, Vicki, does, my experience with sod and with seeding lawns is that the only thing that works real well is when I till up, not deeply, but when I till up the underlying dirt, or in my case, just tearing it up with a grubbing hoe and a shovel, to where the dirt is, loose down a ways. And I've tried laying sod on just dirt with fertilizer on it, and dirt that I could dig in. It wasn't like, rock hard or anything. And the sod usually would fail when I did it that way. The other stuff, it kind of takes off. It might be that we could seed that, but we might need to tear up the surface a little bit, do maybe a shallow tilling
Yes.
of it.
I have highly recommend sand. It
Okay.
Holds water very well. It also moves water very well. You don't want it to sit and drown, but you want it to hold as long as possible before it moves. It works very well, a sandy loam mix of topsoil, your sand. Like I said, you could pre-treat with a fertilizer or wait for it to actually catch, then fertilize. I've been fairly successful at growing grass in previous landscaping jobs that
Do
I
you
have.
think it needs to be tilled, shallow
Yes.
tilling?
Yeah, you
Okay.
break it up, you get that air, because it is in a sense aerating as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So, absolutely.
Well, I would definitely like us to at least get a bid or something
Sure.
to about what, I mean, we might all be shocked at how much it would be.
It's gonna
But at least we'd know, what it is, and it may be that we do certain areas, maybe we do half of it this year and half in the next year,
A field at a time, or,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think the idea is fantastic. The timing is perfect because we can't do anything until mid to late June
Yeah.
anyway. So if we wanna put an agenda item out there or, a motion out there to get a bid on sod for fields 3, 4, and 5 and sand and till it up and what that would cost,
Yeah, I'd do a motion to
throw it
do
out
that.
there.
You bet. To,
And Melissa, would you want to put a motion in there also to include what you would propose as far as your experience with Weah Fields? And that way we'd have it similar. We just have it for record of giving city staff direction on kind of what could work as far as aerating twice a year, recommended in this month or this month, closing the fields these months and this month.
The optimum plan is for
Correct.
these
Yeah.
fields,
yeah.
Yeah,
taking
sure.
care of our.
Because that way it would help everybody
Yeah.
be on the same page and we would,
And then we have record of it that we can go back
Correct.
to
Yeah.
and say, here's what we need on our calendar. That would be great.
That
The
might be
timing.
several motions. That would be a pretty long motion.
Melissa's gonna run it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got it.
Because I
So.
don't have enough to do with my spare time.
Well, we have emailed
Yeah,
about this
we have.
and
We
not
have.
too long ago,
Yeah.
just the times that basically I want to start mimicking what you guys do, because
Yeah.
you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a no-brainer there that you have some insight on the timing of things that I
You
may
know
not
what
be
works
aware
well.
of
You have a
coming from
Yeah.
tested,
different states.
proven method.
Yes.
Correct.
So, yes.
Now, I have to say you get lucky also because it either rains in June
Oh,
or
yeah.
doesn't. So if we have
But we
100
have-
days of over 100.
We have irrigation and we
We
can
do.
stomach the
We for
costs. I
sure
mean,
do
if we
that.
can build it all into our
Yeah.
budget, so.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need a motion to go get bids and bring it up at the next meeting and see if we can get
I
it
don't think-
approved.
Yeah, I think we just.
But I think everybody's for it.
Yeah, great. Well,
So.
let's,
I'll work on that.
okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thanks, Vicki.
The
Thank you.
other piece of that, why I put this on the agenda though, really is, besides the let's get the fields in good shape, is kind of coming up with some general, like, how much do we, how often do we want, now that you know that we need to rest them every year and we're gonna have to move people around, really thinking about how much do we want to rent out the fields. We know we have, and we can basically take like the softball schedule and the Western Hills Little League schedule, fill that out and sort of see what those uses look like. And then looking where we have openings, how much do we want to, how much more do we feel like we need to generate income? And how much do we feel like our citizens, who really do pay their taxes to support the park, how much do we want it to be available for open play? That's something that we really
That
did.
leads right into number 7 on our
Well, good.
agenda.
Because that's really
What-
specific what we did with the pavilion, how we just gave those blocks of hours.
Yeah.
And I do think having a budget and knowing what it costs for us to do what we want to do to the fields will help us back that out.
Yeah.
well, right now, if we were to
And what money
keep
we
our
need.
current vendors, usage-wise, if they stayed status quo, it would be, give me a moment, I'll quickly calculate this, but keep discussing.
And there's
All right, I
obviously,
think we're
it's
already
seasonal.
into number 7.
Okay.
Discussion and possible action on guidelines for staff on field rentals, including which fields to rent first to maximize use for a variety of park users and providing guidance on priorities and setting minimum and maximum number of participants per area. Is that you?
That's me
Put that
again.
on it?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
And again, that's about making sure that we don't have a camp for, and I hate to make lacrosse be the bad guy, but lacrosse tears up fields with the big kids. And so,
And fences.
Yeah,
But we
and
don't
and
have
it's
any
funny.
rentals for lacrosse.
No, I know. I'm
Oh.
just, but if we were, and you might be surprised, I-9, Sport Ball, some of these other ones might want to run like a lacrosse camp in the summertime. So, but baseball, so soft on the fields. I mean, they tend to be, and little kids are really soft on fields. They don't really tear them up. And so you can even kind of we'll be specific where we'll say, hey, I'm comfortable with having a camp on there with, under 5th graders, for a certain number of hours. But if it's going to be high school kids, that's really different. And so as we look at outside of what Western Hills Little League and girls softball and is it I-9?
Correct.
I-9, do we want more? That's sort of the question. And even with I-9, because Western Hills Little League and the girls softball have a long-term lease, that's.
And they have older athletes. I-9 typically is pre-K through maybe 3rd grade. That's their typical user. They're not getting older elementary students, middle schoolers, or high school students. That is not their kind of focus. And to your point of if a new vendor were to come into the city, let's just say FC Westlake wanted to come and rent out for soccer, that's a non-competing sport. We would have some discussion over how many hours you're allowed to do, similar to the pavilion, to say you cannot rent it more than 2 hours per week, up to 50 hours per year, right? We could definitely establish some guidelines like that when we start to get an influx of applications. At this point, we have 4 vendors that should have received notification that effective March 1st, the application process as well as the rental rate structure is increasing, and that you'll be requested to prepay upfront quarterly for your rental rate expense according to the lease agreement. And so again, if another vendor were to come in, that could be something that if we needed, again, I volunteered myself, and if somebody else wanted to do it, that's fine. I'm not taking over on it, but to just have that communication liaison with city staff. Right now, it's Vicky who's working with all the application process to say, is this the guidelines of what we as the Park Commission agree to, that if it's similar to what we've been currently renting out, are we agreeable to continue to rent along those guidelines? If somebody comes in and is excessive or an outlier, that should be, in my opinion, brought back to the Park Commission to say, do we agree to allow this vendor to come in? But if we've had these 4 vendors to date that have typically worked well with the city, haven't really, overstepped or overused any of our facilities, then to me, that's the guideline that we would say we are all agreeable with that usage of what we've currently had. If we have an outlier, we should probably bring it back to discussion for the Park Commission to decide whether or not this is a type of vendor that we want to approve to use our facilities.
By outlier, you mean someone besides those 4?
Yes. Well, no, an outlier, like to Melissa's point, where if it's a high school lacrosse team and they want to rent it for 6 hours a week,
Right.
we should discuss that as a Park Commission to say, I think we would probably err on the side of caution, say thank you, but no thank you. But if it's been a consistent vendor and it's a like use of what we've typically approved in the city for the park usage,
Like use is a key word there. I agree with that.
the like usage of what we've established with these, long-term vendors, then there would not be a need for us to come as a Park Commission to discuss that application for that particular new vendor. But if we got a new vendor that was inconsistent with the like-mindedness of what we've typically approved and is currently using, then we would give city the authorization to go ahead and continue to rent it out.
But that's, I guess, part of what I'm saying is, but do we want to rent out our fields 5 days, 7 days a week, any possible free time that we have?
No, I think your point is well taken, that if we spend a lot of money on sod or grass or whatever, we want to limit the time that we spend on it. And considering that Steve and softball and baseball just spent a lot of money replacing all the fencing, if there's a use like lacrosse that bangs up fences, we want to be conscious of that and them.
Well, and we have had, sorry to interject, but
Do you wanna-
there is a guy that goes up there and does lacrosse with 2 kids.
Well, that's different than a camp, though.
I don't know if it's a camp.
No. What I'm saying is, but anyone could go up there and play any sport, right?
Right.
So,
Well-
and that's the way it should
I'm
be,
trying
I
to
think.
look at, sorry, I'm trying to look at, we did just fix the fences and the lacrosse balls, like typically they're going up at that because I think they've got a big backstop and that's why. So if we wanna keep that portion nice, which right now it is, then possibly we would look at things like lacrosse, which typically are going to do damage. There's just no way around it, just saying, yeah, there's free play, no lacrosse, or not here near the fence. I don't know how you structure that.
I
to
mean,
try to
just-
I don't
allow
think we-
people
I
to
think the
swim
standard
more.
is
Yeah.
that anybody who damages the fences ought to have to pay for it. And
Well,
Yeah, I don't think you
and
can
how do you
prohibit-
determine when they damage them
No, I
unless
know, and that's
somebody's
the hard part
videotaping it at the
about
time
lacrosse.
and yeah.
This sounds like a citizen probably and his or her kids are out there playing, which is,
No, it's a younger gentleman who looks like it's a private coach of 2 or 3 kids. Is
Okay.
what I never spoken to, don't know anything, but that's what it looks like from a very uneducated.
yeah, if he's a
Respect.
private coach, he'd need to sign up and pay and all that
Yeah.
stuff,
sure.
so.
So there is a sign, I see them all over Western Hills Lily, you can remind me what it's for. It says no ball toss or something like that, that's on a lot of signs, cause there are things where, even in baseball, I mean, I've seen it.
Soft toss. You're
So-
talking about
yeah.
soft toss into the fence.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah, and you can
we
just say,
do
hey,
restrict
please
that
don't do that.
in
Yeah.
Western Hills, and kind of the same idea with lacrosse. And I mean, to the extent baseball teams do that, we stop them from
Yeah,
doing that because
exactly.
that just damages the fences.
What
So-
is it
Put a
called
sign up
again?
there.
What is it called again?
Soft toss?
Soft toss?
Yeah.
It's where you take a ball and just toss it up for the hitter to hit into a fence.
Yeah,
And that's what those, soft netting
Right. Okay.
yeah, you can use a batting
Is
cage
for 'em.
for it.
Back up. I mean,
Yeah, you can
I
do it
don't
all day
know
long
to
into
put
a
that
soft
back
net,
up.
but
Yeah.
if you
I've
do it
seen
into
them
the
do
hard
that on
fences,
field
it damages
one
them.
A lot, right, facing the parking lot on field 1, like,
Yeah.
so.
Anyway, you can just put up signage that say, please
Yeah.
no soft toss, no, you'll be
No
held liable if you.
hitting into the net,
no
no
hitting into the net. I mean,
throwing into the net.
Yeah.
And just-
Into
it's
the fences.
Usually
mostly,
get into the whole signage thing,
Yes.
which
Right.
we were
Yeah.
trying to put signs up for different
I
things
know.
when I first joined Park Commission.
Well, and we
several
have
years
something we'll
ago,
touch
and
on
then it
later.
was, no, we don't
Right.
want signs everywhere, but I don't know what the right balance is.
So
but-
if we agree that this gentleman should not be doing this at our park, I think what we need to do is tell him.
Well, I think what the right thing to do would be is if he really, I mean, we don't know that he's commercial.
Yeah,
But
he,
if
he
he
may be
is-
somebody's older sibling or cousin or an
Yeah,
uncle or something.
exactly.
You don't
So
know.
we're inferring a lot here.
Right. What
Yeah.
the problem seems to be is people smacking the fences with balls.
Yeah.
yeah,
If
Yes.
you have signs up saying, please don't hit balls into the fences,
that's it.
that
But-
covers every sport.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we get
Exactly.
back,
And not sports, that just, throwing balls, just don't hit the fences.
but we get back to Lori's point, which is more signs.
Well,
Okay,
and,
but-
and
We
we've
need
got
to
it.
think about all the things we're talking about for signs to do, and then have a smaller committee say, okay, what's really important, what really makes the most sense, what do we really want to convey?
And we have an agenda item later on down the road that talks about QR codes to address some of these things. And so that could be a subcommittee, to your point, of when we get to that agenda item, to see what direction do we want to take this in. Going back to how many hours do we want to rent out fields? Currently, what I've tracked is that on an annual basis, 600 hours are being rented. So
Current,
if everybody stayed status quo, Life Keto, I think, it's definitely reduced their numbers now that they're back in their dojo. However, if my math numbers are correct, there's 8,760 hours in a year. So we're really,
using
this is
600.
not including Western Hills Little League or girls softball. So again, that's a lease agreement, and we're going to build that time for their practices as well as their schedule for their games into our city Google Calendar, so that we'll be able to see exactly what those hours look like. But it's a very in my opinion, it's a very nominal amount right now, where on an annual basis that our fields are being used.
Yeah.
That doesn't include pavilion rentals. That's
Sure.
just for youth organized sports.
May I interject
Sure.
that a 8-hour day of daylight for 50 weeks a year, so 2 weeks of rest, only 2 weeks of rest for the fields is only 2,000 hours. It's not 8,000. 8,000 is 24 hours a day. So we're using
Thank you.
600 hours out of 2,000 hours of 8-hour days.
Okay, so sunrise is,
It depends on the day, but I mean,
So
if
let's
think
just say
about a work year.
12
If
hours?
you work an 8-hour day, 50 weeks
Okay.
a year,
So
you
I
work
will-
2,000 hours. So that, just ballpark, it's a quarter of the 8,000.
2920, 8-hour day. Almost 3,000 hours.
Okay? And then resting time for the fields.
Well, now you're going back to the 24 hours a day.
What's 2920?
No, I mean, take off the
The
Well,
8 hours a
I
day
know,
that the
I'm-
fields are usable.
Oh, yeah, 'cause there's seven days in the.
I
in
just
the week.
appreciate the
7 days,
realistic
yeah.
numbers.
And so, again, sorry to bring in way out all the time, but it's like, the other thing that you have to consider is, when are the usable hours really? So most people use, like, are available, not at WEA, because we don't have adults, but, you know, there's basically at daybreak to about the time work starts. Like, if you were gonna consider that for like workouts or things like that, or even
Yep.
I mean, you could have a children's sports team workout in the morning before school.
Yep.
And then obviously we have to crush everything between 3 p.m. and basically 9 p.m. And with little kids, of course, you're going to want to have them earliest in the day, because you don't want your 5-year-old out there practicing at 8 p.m. And we have no lights, so that's not really a deal breaker for most of us. But that's the other piece. It's like, how, you know, we know that there's really the times that people want to use the fields is very much overlaps. People get off of work, get out of school, all that stuff. So then you really say, okay, these are the usable hours. And you're right, it comes down to it. There's not that many hours, but there are a lot of different users. So how are we going to try to make it good for everybody? Yeah.
All right, we've got about 20 minutes left.
Yep.
Is there any
Can I
action
throw in
item
one
on
thought
number
on this?
7? Is
One
this
of
an
the things-
action item on this one for
It's-
7?
This is about 7.
Okay.
Okay. One thing we might do is we might say, what times of day, what days and what times of day would we want to set aside for use by the citizens? Just say this is off limits for leasing the park space. And,
Well, you'd have to renegotiate the Western Hills Low League and girls softball leagues because they have
I'm
it.
not saying we butt into their time, I'm just saying with the time that's currently available, we say this is what makes sense to reserve this for use by the community. Rather than, I don't know, then that would be a relatively simple way that gives you our existing 4 vendors, Little League, girls softball. There's a lot of openings within there. If we went and we said, let's set these aside for the community, that leaves everything else more or less available.
Is that something you want to propose right now?
No. I'm just throwing it out for discussion.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Anything
suggest.
else?
Gavin?
Go ahead.
Okay, Gavin Massigo, Mayor. Thank you for the dialogue. So we still have over 10 applications for reservations of these fields. Based on this conversation, I'm going to do my best to work with my staff to split the baby. And we're going to, where we can, prioritize them not being on 3, 4, and 5 if the type of camp that they're trying to have warrants them being over somewhere else. Having, though, tried to run routes with my son on the outfield, if it's an older age group with a type of sport that doesn't lend itself to an outfield usage, I'm going to suggest that they're over 3, 4, and 5. And we will try to also split the baby in terms of timing and that sort of thing. I'm going to look deep. I'm going to do our best. That will not make everyone happy. But if everybody's a little bit upset, then we probably have done the right thing. So
Actually, that would make me very happy, that type of consideration for each situation, instead of trying to set something in stone.
I'm going to take it on for me to do that. My problem with that is, and maybe we'll be able to get in a groove where staff can kind of do it on their own. I don't want you or anybody else yelling at staff. So
Yeah.
if it's screwed up, come yell at me. I'll leave it with that. So,
Thanks for
They're-
trying.
they're doing their best.
I appreciate it.
That sounds
That's,
perfect.
yeah,
Okay.
I think that's
that's
a
more than's
very
been done in the
reasonable-
past, and
We'll try that.
Yeah.
Doesn't work,
That'd be great.
try something else.
Mayor, should some of that come back to the Park Commission for our
You may
consideration?
take it back after I
I
do
mean,
it.
Let the mayor do it.
in the past,
Yeah.
in the past, that has been, these things that come to us and we,
Yeah.
I think we just rubber stamp them
Everybody's
all.
intentions are honorable and everybody's trying their best. Let me take a stab at it, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And y'all can do it.
'Cause
So will
until we
we
have
have a
guidelines-
situation again where a leaseholder will be asked to move?
Well, my goal would be not to.
Okay.
Again, if the buck's stopping here, then I will ask whoever to call me and let me try to straighten that out. But,
Because that would,
I
we
can't
need that
guarantee
clarity,
that.
just like with the warranty deed.
sure.
That clarity to have the like-mindedness as well as the relationship and the partnership, unless it's a safety issue or an extreme circumstance.
Yes, I understand, and I'm trying to take that off of both staff's plate and also, our police department, they do great work, but they're not interested in having to
They've got enough on their plate.
mitigate that as
So
well.
one of the things that is confusing sometimes, because I went out there recently and we need to get this straight with all of our vendors, is that, and we have this that way all the time, where people are scheduled to be there from 3 to 4 and they show up at 2 o'clock and parents start dropping off kids and then some kids don't get picked up until 5 o'clock. So I do want us to make sure our vendors are building in that time. Like, if you're gonna be setting up.
And
Yep.
take down.
Yeah.
And I did communicate that with I-9 when they started this new rental
Yeah.
effective in January, I believe through the end of February, I asked Justin, I said, please build in your setup time and your breakdown time. And his application shows 30 minutes on the front end, and he is being billed for that. And at 6 o'clock, he is off of those fields and everything is cleaned up because his end camp time is 5:30, and by 6 o'clock, he's done.
And it's really so the next team can get on and.
For
it's their
sure.
Time we wanna value also.
And a lot of that can be solved with good communication, so
For
we'll
sure.
try that.
The other thing is, a lot of people are very hopeful when they put their thing out and they hope they get 50 people at their camp or at their practice, and then they get 5. And so just that we're flexible also, that once they've set up for their season and they know they're only gonna have 5, well, then you don't really need 3 fields. And we wanna, in
But
a
there
way,
should
we're
be-
cutting them a deal and saying, hey, we wanna get you onto one so that,
So I think there should be a point of contact for our vendors and not
Yes.
just anybody who happens to see them gives them direction.
I
That's
agree.
not
Yep.
fair.
I
Yep.
agree, and I will
Yep.
yeah.
probably end up putting myself number on there, so at least
And
for
then the
the
last
first time
thing
or
is,
two.
one of the things that I noticed the day that I-9 was out there really early I guess it was last Thursday, was that there was actually a neighborhood sports flag football team that was practicing on the outfield of, so neighborhood sports doesn't give their people a designated place to do practices. I'm pretty sure girls softball and Western Hills Little League, they designate their practices and their games, but neighborhood sports doesn't, and so,
Is it a pickup game?
no, it's not a pickup game.
It's an
What it is-
organized
it's an organized, they are supposed to.
league.
It's an organized league.
Yeah.
What they do is they tell those coaches to just go find an open field. They have games where they schedule it, and they don't schedule it in our fields. They use several other fields around town. But you'll see a lot of coaches.
Practices on your own.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh, I have a park in my neighborhood. I mean, my son played it, and we would go play at some elementary school, and it was just. But what can be confusing to some people is, well, is that a paid practice? Is that, it's not really? And so if we have a good schedule, then we'll know, hey, all of a sudden, because let me tell you, once you become a place that neighborhood sports knows that people can jump on your field,
Yeah.
they'll come jump on it,
No doubt.
and I don't want girls softball or Western Hills Little League to show up and go, hey, we had a scheduled practice and they're running a practice, but they don't even realize those people have not rented the field.
But what if we went and reached out to neighborhood sports and said, hey, we do have a commercial policy, we do have a current lease in place, I want you to go through the proper channels if y'all are gonna use our fields, which they probably won't because it sounds like they just want freebies, but maybe it's a proactive approach there.
That's and I can even tell them,
Are they
hey, don't use
nonprofit?
Hatley Field.
Yeah.
Are they a
They're a
non-commercial?
nonprofit. Well, they're a for-profit business, but they, but still, because their coaches are volunteers, they're gonna go wherever they want.
But I think
Yeah,
that
no,
call
I
would
think
be
that's-
helpful.
Sure, absolutely.
But they're.
I think anytime it's an
participants
organized
are paying.
activity from a league,
Yeah,
they
that's.
should
Yeah,
be
it
going
should
through
go
our
through our
scheduling
rental
process.
system.
Exactly.
It would
I
just
think
go
you're
the
right.
nonprofit versus the profit or the commercial versus non-commercial application process, but you bet.
And league versus private, I do. think
Yes.
is-
Yes.
There's a differentiation
Yep.
there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Cool.
okay. Anything else for the mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wish me luck.
We got your back.
Good luck. All right, moving on to number 8, discussion and possible action item to recommend a Rollingwood Park comment, concern, complaint, Google form, identified and accessed by QR code, posted throughout the park, locations and number of signs determined by us. Recommendation to have the QR code posted on the Rollingwood website, Western Hills website, distributed electronically to Western Hills and Western Hills girls softball. This is something I've been helping with. I don't know if anybody's looked at the QR codes, but it's pretty slick. You can go to the QR code, and this kind of leads into number 12 agenda item as well. But you can not only make comments or complaints, you know, if you have a baseball coach who's being rude or something like that. But in number 12, you can also access the park reservations and park space availability and everything right from your phone. So the idea would be to put up some of these signs around so that all parties can not bicker with each other, but go immediately to their phone and go, hey, I want to register a complaint. This baseball coach was a jerk, or this dog bit me, or whatever it is. This person's launching lacrosse balls into the fence and causing damage. And you can just go right to your phone. So the idea would be to post this in a couple of spots in the park around where people could see them.
Yep.
And
Like on that billboard.
yeah,
whatever they
exactly,
call
like
that
the
thing.
billboard you're
That
talking
would be
about, right in
great.
front of the
That's not-
exercise area.
The one that's not getting utilized, that's perfect.
That's not getting utilized.
I love this.
So, Vicki did a great job on setting up the QR codes, and if you want to go to it, you can
Wow.
see. You just take a picture of it with your phone, and it takes you right to the spot.
The only thing is you have to have a Google account. If not, my email is there for now until we find a
Thank you,
little bit
Vivian.
different of a system, so at least we can get it to us. But
Wow, this is great.
Cool. That's awesome.
So I'd make a motion that we put a few of these up around the park, and
May I interject something?
yeah, sure.
The part about linking to park reservations, if there's any financial transaction that gets linked through this QR code, don't forget that the city of Austin just last month had a whole bunch of QR spoof codes posted all over a whole bunch of parking meters that directed people to pay a fraudulent company. So any money that transacts to reserve a parking should not go through these QR codes that are out in the public.
I
Okay.
think
That's
this
fine.
is just
That's
taking you
fair.
to a point.
This
That's
is
good.
just to get you into the
Right, okay,
website.
Okay, but,
We're not-
what was happening is
Yeah, we're
the
not
city of
done mowing
Austin's
people
parking
through this
meters,
QR code or anything like
the
that.
QR code was taking them to a website that looked like the proper website, but was not, and then was collecting payment for parking
Definitely worth
that
keeping
was
in
not going to
mind
the
that
city of Austin, it was
we
going
need
to
to keep a
somebody.
diligent eye on the QR
Yes,
codes that are
I'm just
posted.
thinking that
No,
some
point
positive
well taken.
feedback from the city of Rollingwood when you submit a request, that if you don't get that positive feedback from the city of Rollingwood, then there's a problem.
Well, let's
And
just
don't
keep an eye
give the
on
money
these
like
and
that.
make sure there are signs that are with our QR codes, and I'd be all for it. Vicky, you got something?
yeah, I was just gonna let you know that it goes directly to me or Nicole or Ashley. No one is exchanging money until they're even approved at that spot.
Okay, cool.
And then in check form, deposits or actual
Okay.
rentals will happen then. So we're not putting money on
Excellent,
anything
that
in
was
there.
my concern because of
Cool.
the problems.
Well, I made a motion to post a few of these,
I'll
at least
second
on a
it.
trial basis, and
I
just
love
see
it.
how they work. And if next month we come back and we say this is a disaster, great. But if not, let's try it out. and See
I have
if
a
it works.
question.
Yeah.
So these will go right to either your email address or to the city website?
The
Or,
first QR code takes you to the website where you have the option to select if you wanted commercial, non-commercial, or
okay,
pavilion.
it takes you into the application process?
Yeah.
Then you
Okay.
hit that link, then you apply. The second QR code takes you directly to the comments or concerns page to fill it out, so you don't have to fumble around with the website. So
Okay,
it's a
but
straight
it-
shot.
Just a
This is
easy
the
way
first
to.
place the first one takes you to,
Okay.
and then the second one took
Okay.
you here. Rollingwood Park.
Well, I will second that motion.
Second that motion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passed. Number 9 is discussion and possible action regarding expanding the existing butterfly garden on the west side of Rollingwood Park.
The existing butterfly garden, doesn't look like much right now, but it's fairly new. So I was wondering, what I'd like to do is, of course, fix that and make it a much better butterfly garden this year, with more mulch, compost, and plants, and then expand that butterfly garden. I guess that would be to the south. It would be actually doubled in size.
Is everything on the exterior of the walking trail?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get a
On
visual.
the outside of it, yes. And I've done my homework as far as the kind of plants that we would need. I've gotten some more help from Dan at Barton Springs Nursery on choosing the plants, and I've actually started designing all this. And when I was looking at all this, Rollingwood Women's Club, they got wind of this and told me that they would actually be interested in hearing more about this and possibly funding it. They told me if I would get them quotes, bids for the products, construction, everything, the materials, everything I need, installation, everything, that they would consider voting on it at their next meeting. So I've been hurriedly putting all this together. I'd also want to put a trellis there, so I had somebody out there yesterday to look at putting in a trellis. I'm looking at something that's sustainable. And I just wanted to get y'all's approval to go ahead and carry this forward.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
So, several years ago, we had a grant from somebody, I don't remember who it was, that gave us $5,000 for this butterfly garden. Do you remember that?
I don't.
It was, and I'm just wondering, has that money been used?
I've
or-
never seen any money. I did this so far with my own money and with some money that Phil was able to get from some of the people, the dog that were in the off-leash area. They saw me and us out there working on this, and they were interested, and they donated money. But other than that, I did it all with donated plants or what I purchased myself, and then they gave me money.
That's awesome. Well, I do think there was a grant because we talked about doing it on Rollingwood Drive, but we were told that wasn't good because of the traffic and the cars. And we had a lot of discussions about this, and I do think there was a grant at some point.
Well, where is
for
that money then?
But anyway, I say go ahead and move forward with the Women's Club. I think that's wonderful, and they,
Okay,
I
very
think that's a
good.
great
So
thing,
you
and
want to
I'll
throw
try
a
and go
motion
back
on
and
the
find
table
that.
to
Yeah.
expand the existing butterfly garden on the exterior of the
Yes.
walkway and beautify it? I'd be all for that.
But what if we were, well, never mind. I'm not going to go down that hole. Okay, I'm good.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, I make a motion that to expand the existing butterfly garden and add a trellis and hopefully a bench at some point.
In working with the women's,
In working with the grant from the Women's
and
Club.
and apply for a grant from the Rollingwood Women's Club.
I think, we would love to see kind of a depiction of it once you get all that.
Absolutely.
Organized,
I would have
just
had
to
that
make
today,
sure-
but I didn't
Yeah.
know how to draw it.
No,
So
but I
how about
think-
if I do something, if I can find someone to help me draw it for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Because I'd like some input, actually.
Yes, I think that would be
Be
great to.
Subject to a
see it.
quick review of what it looks like and make sure everybody's on the same page, I think.
I would like that. Is
I'd-
there anyone here that can help me draw it? I just don't know how
I
to.
can help you.
Could you? That'd be great. Okay, good.
All right.
Okay. So
We need a motion.
yeah, your motion?
Second.
you'll second it?
From Lori. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay? All right, well, subject to a quick review of what it looks like and all that stuff, everybody's in favor of expanding and
Great.
moving
Thank you.
forward with the women's club and spending more money out there.
And then we'll see it next month.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll see
have a
it.
drawing
Spending the
because
women's
I would
club
like some input
I'm all
on.
for spending, I'm all for spending the women's club money.
Yes, as long as it's coming out of the women's
And the
club budget.
existing grant of 5,000 that
Right.
Lori speaks of.
Yeah, go find that restricted money in
I'm
our
gonna go
account.
see where I can dig that up.
All right, number 10, discussion and possible action to install a motion sensor light on the east side of the field house. And I think this kind of runs into number 11 as well. We can talk about installing outdoor security cameras throughout the area and kind of hit both of them.
I had submitted both of these on the agenda, and I was out in the batting cages with my 8-year-old, and Vicky, bless her heart, the day that the water break happened on the corner over there, she came by and she's like, "Y'all are still out here, you're gonna hurt yourselves." And I said, well, it'd be great if we could get a motion sensor just to illuminate that side of the trail as well as that side of the park. It gets pretty dark out there, and it would only be obviously, illuminated if somebody or there was activity in the area. So it was just thought, and wanted to bring it up for discussion and possible questions or concerns that somebody would have to
Do we
see.
have any idea how much this costs to do a motion sensor light and outdoor security cameras?
Well, we have a motion sensor light already there on the field house. There's 2 of them. And so in my conversation with Vicky, it was if we could tap into that existing conduit there to be able to put up a fixture that you would illuminate toward the batting cages and then the walking trail. Didn't seem too difficult to do. And again, I didn't have the opportunity to go down and find out the cost on it. But when I
Done
looked at
tastefully, and it's not pointed towards anybody's house or anything
See,
like
no.
I'm out there in the mornings in the dark, and I really would rather not have a light shining on me when I walk by every time. I would find that an irritant. I understand what you're saying. I appreciate for your activities, but I'm out there at least 5 mornings a week in the dark, and I really appreciate being able to enjoy the moonlight, the stars, and just, the dawn.
Well, and technically the park's not open between sunrise and sunset. I think those are the
Well,
usable hours.
That is a point. If
That's a
if the
good
park
point.
is not open, then lighting it invites people to come when it is not open.
And even at dawn, I'm there when the sun rises, and I don't know. It just, to me, that
Don't
light.
incriminate yourself.
Could we at least point it somewhere besides the trail?
I
Does
think
it
we
have-
could, I mean, I don't see why we could determine which way, and if
Like maybe towards the batting cage? That's where you were needing it, right?
that would be ideal if we could get
Okay.
it to go that
I
way.
wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Well, now, if the park is closed from dawn to dusk, then we don't need a light because we're not supposed to.
Well,
be
there
there.
are still off-leash dog users out there during that same time that I was batting with them. It's just the
we're
visibility
not
gets a little
talking
bit.
about them.
That wouldn't light up fields 3, 4, and 5. I wouldn't think. That's one thought. Another thought is deer will set those things off, and you'll have these
Over and over
lights
and over
coming
and
on
over and over again.
and off.
Um,
My neighbors have a
raccoons,
motion
skunks,
sensor light that goes off
fox.
all night.
So the
Anything
current
that
ones
goes
that are
by.
on right now, those are also on a sensor?
Yeah.
So,
Why did we get the pavilion? Why does the pavilion have sensor lights? Do we know?
Field house?
Yeah.
yes.
I don't know who put them up. I think it's been done in the last, we didn't have them until about a year or so ago, that they put all the motion stuff on there.
Yeah.
So they're up there, but they don't work. Is that?
No, they do.
No, they
The
work.
front 2 ones do.
Just talking
But
about
we're just talking about
another
adding one on the east side?
I mean, how often are you out there that you need this?
Well, I'm out there all the time, but
Well, I'm out there in the mornings, and I've never seen you out there.
it's the evening. Sorry, my
Oh,
son's
it's
at
in the
school.
evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not in the evening. We go at 4:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then during the winter hours, it gets dark between 5:30 and 5:45. And again, it was just an observation and just looking to see if this is a need or if we think it's an added, security feature for just
We're,
safety.
That's
We're
what
pretty much out of time, and if you want to
Okay.
put it to a vote, we can.
I-
Or we can table it till next
We can
meeting.
table it till next week. That's fine.
And
Okay,
here's
let's
what-
just put it out there and we'll maybe get some more pricing on it. Pricing on outdoor security cameras, where the location is.
And that was mainly because we've had vandalism with the batting cages when COVID
Yeah.
came through. We were just talking about lacrosse users damaging the fences. I've chatted with Vicky about nannies being disrespectful and leaving litter out, when they've been using the park. So that was just more of, this is kind of the era we're going to, is being able to have the opportunity to see what's going on in our parks when we don't have eyes out there all the time.
That sounds
So they
great.
have the one camera up there.
They do?
The police department put one up on top of field 2's backstop.
Okay.
Interesting.
Supposedly it's a 360. When I spoke to him, because when we were doing our.
And then we put the netting
Yeah,
around.
we were doing our netting, we were trying not to block their view,
Yeah.
and he's like, we can get a pretty good view of the whole park with that camera.
Okay.
But
Nice.
and pick up lots of, I guess it picks up conversations too.
Oh, that's really,
Ooh, and that
really,
was-
really unpleasant. I highly disapprove of that.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, talk about an invasion of privacy at a public park.
Way to go, Steve.
How about this?
No, but thank you for bringing it to our attention, because
Now we'll be
that's
careful if we talk
not a
about
good
somebody.
thing. I mean,
I'll get some pricing on both of these and then bring it back to the next meeting. Does that sound
That'd be
reasonable?
great.
Real quick, I do wanna say there's a difference between having lighting just to light up something and what you need for baseball. And I do know that in the, generally, and you guys know this already, it's a little bit controversial having lighting on the fields or on the batting cages, just, cause it's just been something we've never done.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we probably need to have a more in-depth conversation about that, because if you put it in one batting cage, why don't you have lights in the other batting cage, and, and then why don't we have them on the fields, and then.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well done.
We're adjourned.
Good job.
Good job.
Vandalism on the batting cages, was that you too?
Yes,
I
from
think
what I
so,
understand.
yeah.